And now, Loose Ends, introduced by Ned Sherrin.
Hello, and we have to use that rather informal greeting on account of you might be listening at this very moment, 10 o'clock Saturday the 4th of July, or you might be listening at this very moment, 11 o'clock at night, sophisticated late-night listening, because from this week we are repeated. However, we will start, as usual, with a noise, and here it is. That's the noise. We also, of course, have to say hello to our most faithful listener. Hello.
Hello, Ned.
Hello, Margaret. Happy listening, and here's a little summary of what's been going on in your world and ours recently. The week began with the emergence of a new and awful threat to democracy as we know it. Mr. Bernie Grant, MP, stood up in the House of Commons and asked a question with his jacket off. This outbreak of lèse majesté was, alas, merely encouraged by old hands like Julian Critchley, who told the shirt-sleeved revolutionary that Westminster was little more than an echo chamber with knobs on. To prove the point, the Lord Privy Seal, John Wakeham, made a very decent show of echoing his mistress's voice when asked about government plans to increase VAT. With Mrs. Thatcher absent in Brussels, Mr. Wakeham obfuscated to the best of his abilities, wisely concluding that it would be extremely foolish of me to say anything more at this stage. Dr. David Owen was meanwhile continuing his campaign to become the Enoch Powell of the middle way. It is not that Dr. Owen is arrogant, it's just that being alone in the wilderness has the advantage of not having to listen to anybody else. Dr. Owen could, of course, do the logical thing and join the Conservative Party, but whether or not they would welcome a megalomaniac visionary into their ranks is a moot point. After all, they already have one of their own. Sycophant of the week was a Mr. Uoni Alealua Oba Akunade Sijuwadi Olubuze, who led a Nigerian trade delegation to Cuba and announced that Fidel Castro was sent by God for our progress and welfare. Mr. Uoni Alealua Oba Akunade Sijuwadi Olubuze went on to say that Cuban citizens should grab their coconuts and pray for their president. I'm not entirely clear how one is able to pray for one's president while grabbing one's coconuts. I suspect that it would be extremely foolish of me to say anything more at this stage. Back in Britain, there came news that there is to be further privatisation of British Rail catering services. A confidential British Rail memorandum revealed that in the event of service failure, catering staff must on no account let passengers know that Trust House 40 have failed to deliver the food. This seems a heartless instruction. Why shouldn't passengers be allowed a little good news for a change? This was, of course, also the week in which Mrs. Thatcher's Minister for Litter ran into trouble in his attempt to beat the transatlantic free publicity stunt record. Whether Virgin Airlines really benefits from these events is open to debate. The current score does rather suggest that Virgin passengers have one chance in 3 of getting across the Atlantic safely. More dangerous is possibly the M5, where a young man was arrested for trying to climb at speed into a van load of naked female mud wrestlers. His reasons were, however, cogent and compelling. As he told the court, there were 2 nude women in the back and 2 nude women in the front. They had everything off and were on their way to Devon. Now, why the journey to Devon makes it necessary to have everything off is not at all clear, but I suspect it would be extremely foolish of me to say anything more at this stage. And finally, news from the south of France, where 2 British visitors went into a restaurant and were charged £115 for a bowl of olives, a small piece of very old fish, and a bottle of extremely rough wine. I was in the south of France myself this week, so I know it would be extremely foolish of me to say anything more at this stage. Now, I am surrounded by Carol Thatcher and Emma Freud, a privilege and a pleasure, I'm not sure which is which. Craig Charles is plodding around in a radio car, which thank goodness he isn't driving. Are you okay, Craig?
Well, Ned, it'd be extremely foolish of me to say anything at this stage. But I'm outside a converted radio taxi in the middle of King's Cross, and I was expecting thousands of people to be here today, but there's only about 10. Now,
are you going to tell us what the event is quickly?
Well, I'm not really going to tell you what the event is yet, because it would be extremely foolish of me to say anything at this stage, but when you come back to me, I'll enlighten you all.
Right, okay, stay there. Don't drive on the wrong side of the street or anything. The mighty presence of Victor Lewis Smith is looming up the line in magnificent York, and we have guests in the studio. We have Tom Vaughan, the impresario behind the original Sloane Ranger mobile discotheque, what a prospect, Juliana's, and we have one of the most talented, versatile, and probably one of the richest young English theatre directors. He co-directed Peter Pan, Nicholas Nickleby and Les Misérables with Trevor Nunn, and all by himself he's directed fine productions of Peter Pan, Twelfth Night, Romeo and Juliet, The Merchant of Venice, Naked Robots, which is not my Shakespeare, Gorky's Philistines, Shaw's Misalliance, and Johnson's Every Man in His Humour. However, the news just now is how splendid Les Misérables is in London. That's old news. In New York, that's reasonably old news. And in Tokyo, that's really up-to-date stuff. The Tokyo production was directed by John Caird all by himself, and it's reasonable to predict that it won't sound at all like this.
Do you hear the people singing the song of angry men? It is the music of a people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a light about to stop and tomorrow come.
John, you co-directed with Trevor Nunn the previous productions of Les Misérables. Why did you go to Japan? Trevor Nunn looks much more Japanese than you do.
Yes, he does. That's why he didn't go.
But was it terribly difficult? I mean, did you have to learn the language?
I had to learn quite a bit of the language because although the theory is that Japanese people know English because they all have to learn it at school, they don't really know it at all well.
If we played a bit of On My Own to remind people of what it sounds like, would you then be able to give us a spirited rendition of it in Japanese?
I would be able to give you a little bit of it.
We'll give you about eight bars.
Mostly because my voice is so rough.
We'll give you about 8 bars of the chorus, first of all.
My Japanese is better than my singing.
We'll hear the music first.
On my own, pretending he's beside me. Alone, I walk with him till morning. Without him, I feel his arms around me. And when I lose my way, I close my eyes and he has found me. In the rain,
Right, and
the pavement shines.
Now, you won't get the benefit of accompaniment, but John, let's just have a little croon into the microphone in Japanese.
愛してるでも夜明けにはいない川もただの川
Straight on to Top of the Pops, actually, in Top of the Pops in Tokyo.
Doesn't he sing nice?
No,
She's
I only
just-
sing that for I've been practicing for weeks.
Ellen Freud is just sucking up because she wants a job with the Royal Shakespeare Company. Were they helpful or supercilious about your attempts to speak Japanese?
Well, they had to be helpful because it had to be explained to me how the language worked. I mean, if you take that little phrase I've just sung, in English, the lyric is actually "I love him," which is a simple enough thing to say in English, 3 syllables. But if you translate "I love him" into Japanese, it's translated "Watashi wa anata wo aishitemasu." That's the shortest way of saying it. So you have to sing "Watashi wa anata wo aishitemasu." You see, instead of singing "I love him," and as a lyricist, no, that could be a drawback.
I can see that it might not even fit the music.
Yes, that's right.
It's very useful for Carol and Emma if they ever go to. They'll be able to make their declarations of passion in Japanese.
That's right. That's right.
Did they? Did they not pin things on the wall to help you?
Yes, they did. Yes. Well, I suggested to all the company that it would be a help to me if they got large sheets of paper and wrote out in English script some Japanese phrases phonetically so that I could learn them. And they put them up on the wall of the rehearsal room. And I left it up to them to decide which phrases they thought would be most helpful for me. So, of course, I got a nice mixture. I mean, you got things like once more from the very top. You know,
What's that in Japanese?
Do atama kara moichido onegaishimasu.
They didn't play any dirty tricks on you, like sort of putting up sentences which meant quite the reverse of what
Well,
you
no,
thought
what they did do was put up phrases that some of them thought would be even more useful to me, like, "Are you doing anything tonight?"
How about the audition process? Because you go straight to a new culture, it must be very difficult to judge how good people are.
The audition process was difficult. It's not difficult to judge because an experienced director can tell the difference between a good actor and a bad actor in any language. The language not really a barrier. It's quite easy to tell. I think anybody can tell a good from a bad in any language. But
I don't know, the small parts in French films always seem to me to be impeccably played.
Well, they probably are being there.
I doubt it. I doubt
But the difficult thing about auditioning in Japan is that they don't do it. And when I went over there, it was for the very first time that they agreed to audition, because it's a matter of honour. You see, if you turn up to an audition, or are seen to be turning up to audition, and then don't get the part, it becomes a matter of terrible dishonour.
They kill themselves.
Well, yes, they would have to commit harakiri.
Very good way of cutting down on the equity members in the profession.
That's right. There are several actors in America and England I've since suggested this to. It was a good reaction to auditioning.
Up there, hang on please, because we'd like you to come back later. Up the line in York, in what he thinks is a small radio studio, but we all know is a padded cell, is our very own Victor Lewis Smith. Have you managed to break into television yet, Victor?
Well, Ned, it's a bit hush-hush, but I'm having conferences with a closed-circuit hospital TV station in Basildon who they want me to do a chat show called Live from Cystitis Ward F. This week, Neddy, the nice Mr. Great has given me the plum job of being Thora Hurd's minder, and because of my experience as editor of the Braille Esperanto edition of People's Friend, he's also asked me to rejig her very excellent Sunday evening programme, Praise Be. And praise the Lord. Sorry, but media-wise, something very special is going down here. Frankly, I've done for Praise Be what Pol Pot did for the Cambodian tourist industry. It's a TV revolution. As a result, this week, Thora has made cover girl for The Face. We're talking lyrics, we're talking split crotch, we're talking hot and raunchy, we're talking rubbish, we're talking... Anyway, I've scripted her some sizzling, too hot to handle, abrasive one-liners.
Anne Booth from Allerton, Manchester, told me that when her daughter Hayley joined the choir at Lee Parish Church, she came home from her first practice very pleased with herself. When Anne asked what they would be singing on Sunday, she said, I don't know, but it's number 184. Oh, yes,
Look left, you will see Stonehenge. Look right, you will see Buckingham Palace.
Praise Be also has a new topical documentary feature. This week I'm reporting from the Klaus Barbie Appreciation Society's annual coach outing to the satirical TV programme Mr. and Mrs. I ask some hard, penetrating questions in my new role as John Freeman to Thora's Barbara Walters.
Right, what is your favourite colour?
Bosses.
No takers? If you were not a German, what would you like most to have been?
Not going too well. This is the side of media fame that the public never see. Frankly, when you're surrounded by 150 ex-SS rioting Derek Beatty fans, life is not all cakes and ale. I'll just have an out-of-body experience and explain in Wittgensteinian terms. Postulate 1. This triple-decker German tourist supercoach contains 150 Germans. Postulate 2. They have been travelling non-stop for 6 weeks. Postulate 3. They have no need to make stops since there are 5 on-board lavatories. Postulate 3A. Few British buses have lavatories and travellers must go behind a nearby tree. Postulate 4. To recap, the average German supercoach travels around with approximately 100,000 gallons of Teutonic ordure, or as we logical positivists say, poo-poos and wee-wees. Postulate 5. There are no trees big enough for the German supercoach to go behind, and anyway, I've never seen a supercoach being emptied in the sea or anywhere. Postulate 6. One day there will be a very nasty accident and the M11 will be flooded with a load of old German... They were good German people. They were fine German people. On behalf of the survivors, Bob, the cameraman, and myself, the intensely shy and private television megastar, I'd like to say that the whole Praise Be team and the BBC are devastated by this, what I can only call this terrible, this tragic, this potentially litigious, this... Oh, look, sorry, love, sorry, look, I've dried. Look, could you remove the relatives, please, the mourners, because the crying, it's putting me off. I'll go for another take. They were good. I should explain this. If you look under death in the How to Get Into TV handbook, you'll read this. Death is not an end, it is another photo opportunity. Death is nature's way of letting you show that a TV megastar is a deep, caring and sincere person. Always take a spray can of ammonia and keep the tears running. Always keep your best side to the camera, but always look as if you'd rather it not be there. Remember, if in the unlikely event that there is someone more famous than you amongst the mourners, be sure to stand just behind them to assure your appearance on the 6, 9, 10 and 11 o'clock news. It is not etiquette to ask for an equity fee for a funeral appearance. And remember, while it is both dramatic and good television to jump sobbing into an open grave, on no account attempt this at a crematorium.
Attention, please. Owing to a freak dust storm, there will be no play at Wimbledon today. Freak dust storm, there will be no play.
Let me fill you in. Anyone, even a TV megastar, can accidentally cremate themselves. My remains inextricably got mingled up with those of a keen German tennis fan who had asked for his, and therefore my ashes, to be scattered over the centre court. No play at Wimbledon on Tuesday. Me again.
Shut up, you coat!
A glass of Wincarnis tonic wine and a few dabs of Germaline soon rehydrated and restored me to full health.
Now, Triple, you will follow orders!
Well, almost back to normal. It's Wednesday evening and Mrs. Tripley goose steps into my luxurious penthouse bunker dressed as Brunhilde and superintends my refreshing and invigorating intestinal douche. Loose Ends would like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Bint of Gallows Corner, Romford, for this week's gratuitous anal reference. A TV license is winging its way toward...
Feeling
It's Thursday night.
more than
Richard Clayderman on the dance set.
nothing.
The goat chewing at the Draylon suite. My concierge, Mrs. Tripley, has left. Moody and alone and living my life like a candle in the wind, I fix an overdose of Lemsip and peruse the contents of her husband's Masonic bag, which she left here by mistake.
Disgusting.
We have a Dickie Valentine fanzine, circa 1957. There's a pamphlet entitled Repatriation Now, very savoury. The I Spy book of sexually transmitted diseases, something unidentifiable because the batteries have melted the plastic, a Fireball XL5 comic with the phrase blackmail is an ugly word, crayoned in childish handwriting, 2 tubes of ointment and a packet with some white powder in, a woggle, some sacking containing a shrunken skull marked a present from the Philippines, a signed photograph of the zany radio presenter Louise Botting,
Shouldn't be allowed.
a torse, eyebrow tweezers, body bag, some Polaroid pictures of what looks like the inside of someone's mouth with their teeth removed, and finally a book called Knowledge for the Growing Boy.
Oh, no.
Suddenly, there's the sound effect of a telephone ringing in reverse. Hello? It's the nice Mr. Guardhouse backwards. With all these BBC cuts in mind, he's reversed the charges.
Hold on, Mr. Guardhouse, you're in reverse. I'll just cross my wires. Ah, that's better. Now, how can a TV megastar help a squalid, ugly little radio non-entity like yourself? Sacked? Sacked from Praise Be? Whatever for? What rude words? What? Sacked because of my postmodernist stance? It's a bloody disgrace. I'm not going. Too late, mate. You've gone.
Thinks, sacked from Praise BA. That leaves only one option, an appearance on Mr. and Mrs. with Derek Mr. TV Beatty himself. But I must first be wed. Since my immolation at the Creme, I'm not exactly an oil painting, but I'm desperate. And since the daughter of a certain British Prime Minister was giving me the green light last week, know what I mean, fellas? And since you can't get on Mr. and Mrs. with Derek Mr. TV Beatty unless you're spliced, I suppose I'd better pop the question and lie back and think of monetarism. What's Carol's number?
Downing Street, 325. Hello?
Hello, you're really visible.
Yes, I know. Will you marry me?
Yes. Visible, very visible.
Who was it who said a wedding is a funeral where you can smell your own flowers? I know, it was me just then. You don't believe me? Here's a slow motion replay. Next week, we hear how Carol Lewis Smith and myself appear on Mr. and Mrs. Do a quick twirl for us, Ned, and be nice to each other.
It does have a certain ring to it, Carol. Carol Lewis Smith, doesn't it, don't you think?
I'm not sure about that, but I seem to have accepted. Must have been my mother saying yes. Now then, Victor.
Yes?
Do you know how to make a girl happy?
I've seen the books. I don't think it's good. Anyway,
What
listen.
about experience?
It's no use you being coy. You know we're going. Look, the way you were looking at me in The Independent, that picture on Monday, it's the green light. Marry me tonight.
But you know Victor is a virgin. Could you relate to a virgin as a husband?
Lord.
Victor, I think it would be extremely foolish of me to say anything more at this stage.
I have a CSE in woodwork.
It's obviously going to be a race to see who's an auntie first. Your mark.
It'll be the mother-in-law who let the side down, frankly.
Carol, I wouldn't if I were you, because I always
Please.
thought I always thought Victor was really sort of dishy from hearing him down the line
Yeah.
from York, but seeing his picture in The Independent, he's horrible.
Wow.
Cheers, Victor. Have a good day.
A tree fell on me.
Now, at the top of the show, we heard from Craig Charles, mysteriously occupied in a radio car in King's Cross. Now, Craig, you are our secret weapon. Just exactly what are you up to? Or, rather, to what exactly are you up?
Thanks, Ned. Now, after months of speculation, it was finally confirmed last month that Frankie Goes to Hollywood's lead singer, Holly Johnson, had quit the band. So in last week's music press, all these absurd and bizarre ads appeared offering to make you a superstar. Auditions would be held for Holly's replacement today at a studio near King's Cross. So that's why I'm here. Why are you here?
I'm here to be the lead singer of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, but somehow I feel that we've been drawn into the ZTT publicity machine.
You really think it's a hype?
Yes, at the moment, at the current time, yes I do.
So why have you come then if that's what you think it's going to be?
Because you never know who you might meet in the business, like I've met you
Where have you come from?
I'm from Leeds.
Oh, you're not going to admit that on radio, are you?
Well, it's near Liverpool, lad.
It's near Liverpool. So why have you come then? Do you think it's hype?
Well, I'm beginning to think that way. Sort of 10 auditions are supposed to be held at 10 o'clock. You know, I expect Frankie Goes to Hollywood. You expect the sort of hundreds of people here, but there's like what, a dozen of us or something waiting to be interviewed.
What do you think you can offer the band? I mean, if you get the job, when you get into the audition, what do you think you can offer the band?
Fine voice.
Have you got a good singing voice?
Definitely.
Go on, sing us a little bit. Sing us a bit of Relax, go on.
Relax, don't do it when you wanna go to it. Relax, don't do it when you wanna come.
That was quite good. So where have you travelled down from?
I've come from Telford in Shropshire.
You're looking quite cool with all that greased back, sort of like blonde type hair and all that, you know?
Well, I did it yesterday and I didn't go to bed last night in case it got flat.
You look like the male version of Annie Lennox. What do you think you can offer the band?
Well, I'd like Frankie to say yeah to Kev, and I think I can offer them more success in the future.
But you know, it's like, say Holly Johnson was the sort of like, I don't know, the style setter in 1984, 85. I mean, do you think you've got this sort of like a different style to offer, or what?
I think so, yeah.
That's a pretty normal answer, and I think so, yeah. One-word answer's okay. What do you think you can offer them, a different style or the same style, or what?
Well, I think I can bring out the best in the other members of the band, which Holly did not do. I think the band wanted to be more heavy. Holly was a star on his own.
Yeah.
I think the rest of the band did not look interested.
Have you always been a Frankie Goes to Hollywood fan?
Since Relax, yeah, I am a fan, yeah. But I still want to help them change direction.
I mean, is this sort of like a chance in a lifetime for you then, or what?
No chance at the moment.
What about you, sir? You've come all the way from sunny Shepherd's Bush.
Sunny Shepherd's Bush, yeah.
So why are you here?
Well, because I'm a pure genius, and I think that this band needs a pure genius.
A pure genius? Well, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, you know, are going to be extremely lucky, and as Cheggers always says on Saturday mornings, back to you in the studio.
Now, staying with music, I have to confess, I suppose it's music, I have to confess not to being a great disco fan. Hey-ho, it takes all sorts. Tom Vaughan started the Sloanes' favourite mobile disco, Juliana's. If you can believe it, Juliana's Holdings PLC is now quoted on the stock exchange, and it's a worldwide enterprise. Needless to say, Mr. Vaughan, who pays generous tribute to his brother Oliver, who he says helped substantially in the writing of this book, has told all for the publisher's Seven House. The book is called No Ordinary Experience. That's a tremendously sort of lavish tribute to your brother at the beginning. Did he ghost it for you? I mean, are you the illiterate one, and is he the writing one?
No, I think it was a team effort, just as the business was a team effort. He and I, built this business from the back of a van to what it is today together, and his input to the book was vital.
Is it still a snob appeal? Because it did very much start off as the Sloanes' favourite, didn't it? Juliana was the eldest daughter of some minor, the Earl of Gainsborough, or something like that.
Well, the recipe for success at the time we started in late 1966 was simply we looked around London and we saw that all the sort of successful nightclubs of the time all bore unusual girls' names: Angeliques, Annabelle, Sibylla, Samantha's. And we thought that's a success. Tramps wasn't going in those days. That was before Tramps. And we just thought, why knock success? So we Juliana was a friend, and we thought, we were looking around for an unusual girl's name, and so that's how we hit upon Juliana's.
Has the character changed? I mean, are you all things to all discotheque goers now, or do you still go for the classy set?
Well, I think when we started, our contacts were, we were able to establish contacts with the Debs and the Deb scene, and we latched onto that and certainly took advantage of it. But really, as the company grew, obviously that to confine oneself to that end of it isn't sufficient. So we developed very much the commercial end, doing fashion shows, product launches, and then onto cruise ships and into hotels.
Do every sort of gig now. You've even done discos at funerals.
Yeah, I think that was probably the strangest request we've had in the career of the company. It so happens that a man who apparently had danced or attended some of the parties we'd played at left a bizarre request in his will that we should provide the music for his funeral. And it was more detailed than that. He actually left a playlist and instructions of exactly how things were to be carried out. A very embarrassed vicar phoned us up to make all the necessary arrangements. And it turned out that it was a cremation service, as they brought the coffin into the crematorium, we had to play with a little help from my friends.
Not Come On Baby, Light My Fire.
No, well, that came later.
Go through this. The list is rather good.
The first one was, as I said, with little help from my friends, and then it had to be Death of a Clown.
Dave Davis's great record. Yes.
And then Fire by Arthur Brown as the coffin was sort of slid into the flames. And then the more gruesome request for Black is Black, and the sort of grand finale of Up, Up and Away. The problem was that, of course, the bereaving relatives didn't share in the humour with which this man had planned his demise.
But the wife did, because she died a year later and did much the same.
Yes, she did, but there were a number of grieving relatives. We sort of thought this wasn't really the time to hang out the banner, book Juliana's. So we kept a very low profile in the back.
Sounds like the wife died from the effects of the funeral.
But you also do sort of tremendous bits of interior decoration, and you book other acts. What? Tell us about Anaconda.
Yeah, Anaconda. But this is when people want cabaret acts and sort of extensions to just straightforward music for dancing.
Describe Anaconda's act to Carol.
Unusual female name, isn't it? Anaconda.
Anaconda. Yes. There is a certain irony, a certain sort of pun there.
It's more
John.
detailed.
It was a lady from somewhere in Yorkshire. I actually can't remember where now, but had rung up and she'd booked us, and then she wanted some sort of cabaret, and we went through the usual list of cabarets, perfectly respectable cabarets, and she kept saying, no, we want something more outrageous, more avant-garde. And so, I tried a few other things that we pulled out of a file, and she finally sort of threw down the ultimate challenge. She said, you people in London think we people in the North are not sophisticated. We need something, you won't be able to shock us. So I sort of said, well, there is this lady who dances erotically with a boa constrictor. Would that sort of thing be suitable? And she thought that was wonderful, you see. So this was arranged that we booked the act. Unfortunately, in booking the act, I did my sums wrong, and had actually booked the act out at cost price. So we'd lost the profit. We couldn't go back and raise the price. So there was no profit element, and the only way to recover from this was to make sure that there was no additional cost to us. So it was arranged that Anaconda and the dancing snake were going to travel with me in the van up to Yorkshire. Unfortunately, I have an absolute horror of snakes of any kind, even very small ones, and the idea of travelling in a van with a boa constrictor was more than I could bear. But I had been told by the man who organised, by the agent, that snakes hate cold weather. And mercifully, this was in the middle of winter, so I rang up and said, we've had a terrible problem with the van, the heat is broken. Please bring your fur coat or whatever.
Or your boa.
And dress warmly. that would have been very prudent. Anyway, so I picked up the lady in this awful sort of Aladdin's basket with the snake in it and put that at the very back of the van, and then proceeded to drive north with the ostensibly broken heater and windows wound down. And it was fine until we got to the hotel where we were staying for the night and where the party was to be. A very over-diligent bellboy came out to the van wanting to take the luggage and things like this. And he sort of opened up and grabbed this big basket because he was told that was to go in. And Anaconda turned to him and said, you must be careful with that. That's my pet snake. And he politely laughed and sort of said, oh, lady, that's the best joke I've heard all day. We took it into the hotel, which was incredibly warm, with blasts of warm air. And immediately the snake showed signs of appreciation and started to swell in this basket. Whereupon this young lad absolutely took fright, and because she came in, the first thing she wanted to do was check on her snake, lifted the lid, and this wretched snake appeared. And the chap just flew over the front desk.
No ordinary experience. And if I remember correctly, the lady was a little shocked by the performance when the snake got under the brassiere. However, no ordinary experience. We move to Carol Thatcher. Carol, you've been action woman again this week, haven't you?
Yes, Ned. Topically, hot air ballooning, but the romantic, up and away sort. No funerals here. Not Richard Branson's rather scary school. I didn't go up with any old pilot, but Robin Batchelor of the Hot Air Balloon Company, the man who taught Richard Branson to fly. 7 in the morning, in a small field out in the heart of Buckinghamshire, frantic preparations were being made to get 2 balloons airborne. Leave it another 10 minutes, and I was told the rising wind and heat would ground us for the day.
Bring your arm clear of that, that's it. Okay, well done, Lucian.
My first reaction to our pilot, Robin Batchelor, was shock. This was an elaborate joke, surely. He's the spitting image of Richard Branson. Perhaps it was Richard Branson. No time to ask. We were off.
Well done.
In seconds, we were floating 1,000 feet above countryside that looked familiar. Checkers is somewhere around here.
Is that on the horizon to our south?
We'll probably see it in a minute because it's near Great Missenden.
I once flew over Checkers, actually, about a year ago.
I hope we waved.
Yes, you did. Well, the policeman did. It was a bit early in the morning. I didn't see any residents about.
Are we going anywhere in particular? I mean, can you dictate which way you go?
Not at all, no. We're just being blown by the wind. Now, I heard on the radio, the aircraft radio, that Luton Airport have westerly winds at 10 knots on the ground, and that is quite fast. That means if I go up high, I'll turn right and head straight for Watford. And there ain't nowhere to land in Watford.
I'm much more concerned about heading straight for Heathrow. I mean, if we meet a passing jumbo, who has right of way?
We do. Steam gives way to sail. And I rely on that occasionally, but we've got good visual met conditions. We can see about 30 miles and something 80 feet high with Alka-Seltzer written all over it. You know, they've got to be able to see us and turn away from us.
Robin got the call to train Richard Branson for his epic journey late last year. Why was he chosen?
I think his other pilot, Per Lindstrand, knew that I had enough experience, and so I think it was he that put him onto me. And I certainly enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun. We all left England the day after Christmas, and we went to absolutely the middle of Spain. So wherever, it didn't matter which way we went, we wouldn't land in the sea. So that was one good practice for him. And we went to a place called Ocarnia, and within 3 days, he'd gone solo. He was a tremendous pupil. He had more energy than me, and I rather pride myself on the amount of enthusiasm I had. And so he was very easy to teach. We went straight into quite advanced techniques. He absorbed them straight away, had very good judgment.
I gather you gave him a bit of a hard time.
Well, that's very true. He's a very similar character to me, and we found this out as we went along. We're both great showmen, we're both tremendous enthusiasts, impossibly egotistical and self-opinionated and cantankerous. And so ballooning means getting up very early in the morning, which adds to the problems. And so when he wanted to suddenly fly off in thick fog, I said, "You must be mad, we're not going off here. Don't you, I'm paying you to teach me to fly." So we went through these episodes, but it was great fun. There was no love lost. And it made us, you know, have a much healthier respect for one another.
You also look terribly alike, and you've got the same initials for a start, but you do look terribly alike. Was there ever a time when he said, "God, I'm so busy, I'm a tycoon, why don't you just go fly across the Atlantic, no one will know the difference"?
Not that, but what he did do, bless him, when he left school, he refused ever to take another exam. And when I said to him, "Well, now you've learned to fly, you've got to take 3 exams," he said, "Oh, crikey, you know, I don't want to take any exams. You look like me, Robin, you take them for me." Well, I hasten to add to the CAA, he did take them himself, and I think got very high marks in all of them.
By 8 o'clock that morning, Robin began to peer nervously out of our basket. As temperatures rose, thermals were making flying conditions dodgy, and soon we'd have to land. But where? Below us, just houses or fields filled with ripening crops. Robin wasn't worried, though.
We at the Hot Air Balloon Company have been asked to do some crazy things, and I found myself landing on top of a skyscraper in the middle of the night in Mexico City as Ryan O'Neill's double. That was for a film called Green Ice. Superman 3 saw us flying over the Grand Canyon, suspended from a helicopter in tiny little balloons, me dressed as Robert Vaughan this time. One of my most memorable landings, I remember, was on a glacier, having flown across the Eiger for a Mint advert. This was in about 2-3 years ago. We had to fly over the Alps, and that was a wonderful flight because it demanded a lot of experience, which takes a while to get psyched up to feel you're ready to do, and I was thrilled at getting that right. Right, now if we have to land suddenly, do that, then we want to bend your legs, a little bit like that, and hold on tightly to these rope handles.
The end of our flight was much less dramatic than some of the Branson Bachelor efforts. Just a few amazed young faces greeted us as we landed unannounced on the local school's cricket pitch.
I'm going to go up a bit now.
Emma, you too have been up in a balloon, I gather.
I have. I went up with Robin about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, the same chap?
Yeah, before he was going on to do some ballooning races at Maidstone. And it was raining incredibly hard when we went up. It was like a monsoon. And the rain lands on top of the balloon, travels all the way down around the outside and comes straight into the basket where we were with our cameraman and sound recordist. And it was raining so hard and I looked so much like a drowned rat that when we opened the bit, it was on the 6 o'clock show on live TV, I said, "Hello, Michael, we're in a balloon and it's absolutely pissing down," which made the Sun newspaper the next day. Terrific.
What, the weather or your way of describing it?
Emma Freud's star of London Weekend shocked London Weekend viewers.
Phew, what a scorcher.
Emma Freud, ever ambitious to be Pamela Stevenson, alternative comedienne. Well, it's July the 4th, so let's have a vaguely American item. Jay Landsman is an American who has the good luck to be married to one of the nicest girls and one of the most original and talented lady lyric writers in the English-speaking world, Fran Landsman. Jay Landsman was born in St. Louis, and there and in New York he's had careers as an antique dealer, an electrical expediter, whatever that is, a failed union organizer, an army reject, and the early trailblazing editor of a magazine called Neurotica, which gave early recognition to people like Kerouac and Ginsberg. He's run nightclubs, directed reviews, tried to be a stand-up comic, a director of musicals, and an impresario who employed both Woody Allen and Larry Hagman, among others, but not at the same time. He also decided against employing the young Barbara Streisand. Now he's become an autobiographer with his new book, Rebel Without Applause, which ends in 1964 when he and Fran arrived in England and began to haunt and enhance life in Soho. Young Robert Elms was about 3 years old then, and he still thinks he invented Soho. So we sent them out together to revisit the streets which Jay got to know when Robert was still on his dummy.
You've come a long way from St. Louis.
Yeah.
To coin a phrase. You're sitting in the middle of Soho with me, which is a place that I've been to before, a couple of times. How and why did you get to Soho?
Well, I ran out of style in America in 1964, and I came over, Fran and I, with our 2 children, came over here to just for a talent tune-up. We were kind of exhausted after a 15-year stint as a cabaret theater, and
what else? You've done a few other things as well.
Well, I was a playwright, and I was a director, and all kinds of nutty things. And
you were the first bohemian, according to some.
Well, I was first. I won't say the beatnik, but I had a interesting approach. I was an editor in those days in New York. I edited a magazine that had the seeds of the beats that came later. It published all the kind of things that beats went for, and I remember, Neurotica, and I remember them always telling me, coming up to me and saying, "Oh, that Kerouac's such a great writer. You got to read his stuff." And Kerouac coming up to me and saying, "You got to read Ginsberg's stuff. He's such a great poet." And everybody's saying how great the other one was, and I didn't like any of it.
One of your other schools, which some people listening to this program might not know about, is that you were a great mambo dancer with a champion pogo stick.
Mambo was a creative act in those days that defined American sexual imperialism because.
Hold up, I don't quite understand that.
What America did was corrupt this beautiful dance step and they corrupted it by its heavy dose of American sexuality and repression. It expressed repression, aggression, oral, every kind of American perversion. And these Cubans picked up on it because that's the way they got the attention, and that's what gave them their success.
So how did you do it?
Well, I was an old-fashioned mambo dancer. I did a straight missionary mambo.
What happened when you got to Soho, and what did you think of it? I mean, you'd come from
via
New York.
I felt at home in Soho. It had all the elements. It had all the failures. It had all the hustlers. It had all the good-looking people and the talkers. That's what Soho had for me.
Was Soho in '64 the swinging place that we think of? Was London swinging in those days or not? I mean, coming from New York, which certainly had been, did it seem a bit small town?
I was shocked. Yeah, the swinging was so great here that I got dizzy.
You've been in Soho 20 years now?
25, almost 25.
Almost 25 years?
Yeah, almost 25. I haven't changed in 25 years.
Has Soho changed in 25 years?
Yes, very much so. I mean, I had a publishing company at Wardour Street next door to Spankorama.
Is it a day place or a morning place? I mean, which
day place now.
Day place now?
I think Soho's dead at night.
Yeah?
I think it's dead at night. There's no fun walking down the streets anymore. It's, unless you like to look in the boutique stores, it seems to be one boutique center. I hope it doesn't go the way of Covent Garden.
What kills a place like this?
Success.
Success?
Yes, definitely.
In what respect? I thought success was a good thing. We live in a successful age, don't we?
Success is not, as far as I'm concerned, success, you know what my slogan is. I've lived my whole life in taking the sting out of success and putting the fun back in failure. Unless your success is a creative thing and not based on money, you're dead.
So have you failed or succeeded in your life?
What do you think?
Have you had a good time?
I had a good time. I think that's what people resent more than anything else. I mean,
let's leave this den of daytime iniquity and walk into the clubs and the sin of Soho. This is an extremely dark and dingy doorway. Where are you taking me?
We're going up to the Colony Room, which is a club where the original bohemian atmosphere in London happened during the, I guess, 50s and 60s. It was a place where Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud and Mike Andrews and all those artists used to hang out here when Muriel had it. And it was, well, come on, let's go upstairs and take a look at what it was like to be decadent in the old days.
How long did it take you to find it?
Day and a half.
Has this place changed much?
Not at all. Nothing has changed here, including the Christmas decorations from 1956. Look at them over there in the vase.
What was the best of the clubs when you first arrived over here?
The Pickwick Club.
Where was
Pickwick
that?
Club on Great Newport Street. It was run by Wolf Mankiewicz. And we thought that was a great place because the establishment was closed.
When you first came over, the establishment was doing something similar to what you were doing, wasn't it?
Exactly. They had Lenny Bruce, they had Professor Irwin Corey, they had the Compass, and all those people started out with me. It was called the Crystal Palace, and it was the first club that had the style of what they called the Fern Club. It was the first club in America or anywhere in the world that used real antiques.
Yeah?
Yeah. Now it's become a cliche. I mean, every wine bar in the world has pier mirrors and ferns and soda fountain chairs, you know, the marble tops. And if I ever get a footnote in history, I'd like it to be for creating the Fern School of Bars.
Apart from clubs, one of the other things that you were famous for was throwing parties.
Yeah, where was the next party was the important question. To me, what made a good party was there was a sense of sexual tension at a party. Everybody wanted to get laid. That's what it really amounted to.
I'll invite you to some parties.
Oh, I'm too old now. I'm too old. I'm a grandpa. Leave me alone. Let me die.
Here we are in Water Street, which has always been one of the most famous streets in Soho. And we're outside a rather chic, black and grey vegetarian restaurant. I mean,
I don't mind it being vegetarian. I'm a little that way myself, but don't tell anybody. But look, they have a plug from the New Statesman in my day here in Soho. A plug from the New Statesman means stay away from this place. And now look, they're plugging it in. Okay, there it is.
Where's what?
That's Spankorama. Look at it. It's completely gone. And that's where I used to be. I had those 2 floors right above the Mecca bookmakers.
What did you have them for? Officially, what was based there?
Book publishing, yes. People would ask me, what kind of books did you publish? The books that don't sell. I started out publishing Elizabeth Smart's By Grand Central Station, I Sat Down and Wept. And I ended up by publishing The Private Case, the bibliography of the erotica collection in the British Library.
Well, look, hold up. There's actually a piece of my history here. Because the San Moritz Club, of which you were above,
yes,
I earned my second ever penny in life DJing in that club at the age of 18. So there we go. That was the beginning of my Soho career in the same building.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, I suppose that's the story of Soho, really. Where you went out, I came in.
Robert Elms and Jay Landsman in Soho. Robert's now back in Barcelona. Jay, I imagine, is back in Islington. We're coming out in about 50 seconds now. So how can we spin 50 seconds? Well, let's try. Let's start by giving our thanks to John Caird and Tom Vaughan, and to Craig Charles and all his young hopefuls, to Robert Elms and Jay Landsman, Carol Thatcher with Rula Lenska and Robin Batchelor, and, of course, little Emma Freud, whose report on the Scouse Embassy we shall include next week. We leave you with this morning's news that the Duchess of York was greatly amused by a T-shirt bearing the words, "There's nothing like a big cock to wake you in the mornings." And there's nothing like a big girl to drop the royal family in it. That's all for this week. We'll be back in a week, and if you missed any part of this historic broadcast, you can hear it all again at 11 o'clock this very night.
You can indeed. Loose Ends was presented by Ned Sherrin. The difference tonight is that there'll be at least 2.5% extra. I leave the measuring device to you. This is Radio 4.